heard. I just want to make sure everybody heard. We are back from break. Roll call, please.
Carlson,
Okay.
Vieira,
Here.
Maniscalco, Hurtak. Here. Goods. Here. Miranda.
Here.
And Citro.
Here.
We have a physical quorum.
Thank you. Mr. O'Hara, he is not in here, but we are going to go to the finance chair to read the millage rate resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 11, a resolution levying an ad valorem tax rate of 6 and 2,076 thousand, which is 6.2076 mils upon all real and personal taxable property in the city of Tampa for the fiscal year 2023. Authorizing the mayor and city clerk to certify such millage, providing an effective date. We go now to the section 1, an ad valorem tax rate of 6/1000, which is 6.2076 mills to raise the amount of money as fixed in the recommended operating budget and capital budget of the city of Tampa for the fiscal year commencing October 1, 2022 and ending September 30th, 2023 for the general fund and maintenance and operation of the city of Tampa, including the Parks and Community Development Agency for the city of Tampa, is hereby levied to provide by law all on real property and personal property taxable for that purpose in the city of Tampa. Section 2, the mayor and the city clerk, as the proper authorities of the city of Tampa, are duly authorized to empower and direct to certify to the property appraiser of Hillsborough County, Florida, the millage to be levied for all purposes for the fiscal year 2023 in the city of Tampa, to wit, 6.2076 mils, which exceeds the rollback rate of 5.6641 mils as defined in section 200.065(1) of the Florida statutes by 9.6%, and to request the levy of the millage to be set forth on all real and personal property in the city of Tampa, as above set forth in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution and laws of the state of Florida. Section 3, that other proper officers of the city of Tampa are authorized to do all things necessary and proper in order to carry out and make effective the terms and conditions of this resolution, which shall become effective immediately upon adoption.
Mr. Chair of the Finance, would you please make your motion? Councilman Miranda.
Well, it says Mr. O'Hara's next.
Oh, Mr. O'Hara, would you like for the chair of the Finance Committee?
Thank you,
to
Mr.
make his
Chair.
motion?
Yes, will the Finance Chair please make the motion to adopt the millage rate?
Yes, sir. Item number 12, motion to adopt the millage rate. Move to adopt the proposed millage rate of 6.2076 mils, which is 9.6% more than the rollback millage rate of 5.6641 mils for property tax funds, which are used to support the general fund operating budget and the Community Redevelopment Agency Fund of the city of Tampa.
We have a motion that is made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Roll call vote.
Hurtak.
Yes.
Miranda.
Yes.
Carlson. I can't hear you. Carlson.
No.
Goods.
Yes.
Vieira.
Yes.
Maniscalco. And Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried with Carlson voting no.
Mr. O'Hara, what is your next
Thank you,
item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Will the Finance Chair please provide the second reading of the ordinance adopting the fiscal year 2023 City of Tampa budget?
Thank you, Mr. O'Hara.
Oh,
Second.
we have a motion to close the public hearing, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goods. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Item number 14, the reading of the 2023 ordinance for second reading. Item number 14 on the agenda.
If you could go back, we should not close the public hearing until the very end, so just.
Second.
you want me to
Motion
say?
to reopen made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goode. All in favor?
Aye.
Council, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm told that if council members want to make motions, now
There
is
we
the
go.
time to do that.
There we go. Thank you. Councilwoman Hurtak.
Okay. I received a request. I know we have worked quite a bit on Silver Oaks this year as a council and trying to help them with the code enforcement violations and the actions there. There is a community member, Miss Erlicia, and I do not know her last name. Oaks. She is has spearheaded, along with April Cobb, a program for children at Silver Oaks. It is called the Beauty Blueprint Foundation. It stands for, I guess I don't have what it stands for, but anyway, they are working on a series of trainings and workshops for youth in this area. So I would like to make a motion to allocate $50,000 from the Social Action Fund to the Beauty Blueprint Foundation to support youth from Silver Oaks.
We have a motion made by Councilwoman Hurtak, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco.
I have also brought this to the attention of Mr. O'Hara.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we now able to proceed with the voting?
Yes, sir.
We have a motion made by Councilwoman Hurtak, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Any further discussion? Councilman Goode.
Is this fund the fund that goes with that grant program, Chief of Staff?
Yes, yes, we will
so-
absorb this into the social action
Okay,
and
so
arts
as I know
fund, sir.
Mr. Vieira's probably gonna make a motion in reference to intellectual disabilities,
Yes,
the reentry and the crime, so that's all coming from that budget. Was that budget, what, $1 million, I believe it is, or?
1.3.
1.3.
1.3, sir.
All right, okay, just wanna make sure we got my numbers right with that, okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Goods?
Yes.
Vieira? Yes. Maniscalco? Yes. Miranda?
Yes.
Hurtak? Yes. Carlson?
Yes.
And Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously. No, the next motion isn't financial, but should I wait then? Okay.
Councilman Vieira.
Yes, sir. And just really fast, I make a motion, and I don't, it can come out of virtually anywhere so long as it's not an important priority, but Lord knows in a $2 billion budget, you can find something, especially for this. And my math leads me to believe, and that wasn't my best class in school, that we're dealing with about $115,000 to fund about 10 to a dozen internships for individuals with intellectual disabilities. I'll make a motion at a separate time whenever it's proper to have that come back to us for the specifics and whatnot. So that would be my motion. I'll motion whenever I can for that to come back. So for $115,000, I'd sent the memo and talked about it to the administration, et cetera, whether it comes from social action or wherever is all good with me.
Second.
You want it to come back?
Oh, yeah, sure. May I make that as part of it? Is that okay? to
Surely.
schedule? Okay, great, yeah. So obviously to give people time, because it is gonna take time. So we're in, what, September? So, let's say, the last week of March, or February, last week of February.
I'm confused.
So I'm requesting the funds, and then I'm requesting that it comes back for the specificity of how the program's gonna work in about 5 or 6 months. Yeah,
All right,
because you
all
can't
right.
just go, hey, listen, let's create a
Okay, all right,
program.
all right.
You need specifics,
all
but I
right.
wanna obviously give them
All right.
time.
Thank you.
There you go, February
Okay,
16th.
all
If I may, and again, as always, if more time is needed, just glad to allow that as a presumption, that's totally fine. So I do make that motion.
Motion made by Councilman Vieira, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Maniscalco?
Yes.
Vieira?
Yes.
Miranda?
Yes.
Hurtak? Yes. Carlson?
Yes.
Goods?
Yes.
And Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
And then if I may, and on the issue there with April Cobb, et cetera, I'll talk to them as well, because do they, and mind you, I'm glad to support it no matter what. Do they only deal with Silver Oaks, or do they deal with Timber Falls, or is it just Silver Oaks
This is
centered?
Silver Oaks Town.
Okay, and that's fine, that's fine.
It's Silver Oaks and other families that are in that surrounding community,
And
but
that's-
the real focus is
Yeah,
on
and that's
those,
cool.
those.
And I can talk to them. I mean, they're good folks. I know them, et cetera. So, and then with the other issue, Councilman Goods had mentioned the returning citizens and victims of crime. That's already in the budget, correct?
Yes, sir.
You're like, yes, for the 8th time. No, I'm joking. But yeah, I know, I'm joking. And then on the fire issue, I wanted to make sure that, again, and Chief Bennett or Chief Tripp can affirm this, that the $1 million for District 7 is going to go, and that's actually coming back to us in October. So I actually did a motion long ago to have it come back to us in October. But those $1 million are going to go to deal with response times at 33647, and then on design for the next fire station. And I'd asked Chief Tripp in terms of where the greatest need is, and she told me of an area, Fowlery Grant, across the city of Tampa, not just District 7, because we want to look everywhere, of course. So with that understanding, I'm not going to ask for any questions, anything else, so that we can save on time. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
I've got Councilman Maniscalco.
You want to add on to it?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
You said you wanted to be after Councilman Vieira. It's showtime.
So I had mentioned, and I was gonna bring it up in the next year's budget, but, in Port Tampa, there's a historic church, the Port Tampa AME Church. And there was the Frederick Douglass School that was torn down years ago. And they have a vision, and I believe there's plans already for a park. They had mentioned, when I say they, this is the pastor, had mentioned around $200,000 and $250,000 for the completion of that park. It doesn't exist, the land is owned, they have it, we don't have to acquire anything. I'd like to, from the same funds that Councilwoman Hurtak had made her motion from, if we could, as a good faith down payment, allocate $50,000 towards that, and then in the next budget, I'd like to go back to them and say, hey, you know, we have the down payment for it.
Yes.
And then next year, the remaining 150 or 200, I don't remember if it was 200 and 250,000, that was the estimate, maybe a little bit high. But again, the land is already theirs. You know, we don't have to deal with real estate stuff, it's there, and I know there was a community meeting, I believe, I don't know if Sharisha Hills was there, or I think Osea was there. I don't remember exactly, but, you know, there are plans that are available that we can look at. But I'd like to allocate $50,000 from the same pot of money, as Councilwoman Hurtak mentioned with her motion, to put towards the Frederick Douglass Park, per se, however it's going to be named. That's my motion.
Understood.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goose. Any discussion? Councilwoman Hurtak.
Should that come from the Parks Department, though? If we're trying to make it a public park?
The land is owned by the church, and they have some of the surrounding property. Being that it's that, I see it as not a cultural asset, but because they, you know, the real estate is theirs, it's not ours,
Okay.
but it will be for public use. That's why I was, you know, when you brought it up, I
Okay,
said,
okay.
I think this could work, or we can take 50,000 of that now and then look at the general fund in the next year's budget to fund the remaining of it, but just to split it up and separate the cost.
I just want a legal opinion, if I may. I don't wanna
Yes,
get
I'm
something
going to
where
Mr.
we,
O'Hara right now. I saw Mr. Massey whisper in his ear.
One of the things I was suggesting to Mr. Rohiro is that perhaps we could come back at the first council meeting in October with a budget amendment to deal where that money should come from, whether that's from that social action fund or from the Parks Department or some other place in the budget. I mean, the budget is not, as you all have made clear tonight, is not a static document. We do amend it throughout the year, so that's
Fair
just
enough, being that, you know, once we approve the budget, there is gonna be funding there regardless, so, I can understand your position, so perhaps that you come back October 6th under staff reports and just give us an update regarding, some of this funding and where it should come from. Again, we're approving the entire budget, which these funds are in that budget. So October 6th, under staff reports, we'll get an update regarding the Frederick Douglass.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
We
That's
still
my
have a
motion.
motion on the floor from Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goods. Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote. Yes.
Hurtak,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Viera,
Yes.
and Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Anyone else? Councilman Goods.
The $1 million for fire, I just want to be clear, even though that's District 7's money, but I want to be clear so the public can know that a fire station is not going to be built with $1 million, because, when people hear that, they believe $1 million to build a fire station. And I got South Tampa, which was in Port Tampa, has one of the second oldest fire stations down there, and they're not getting the station. So if the fire chief can explain what this $1 million was possibly be used for, is this going to be used for those 90 calls, or is this going to be used, in what way? So the public can know that $1 million is not going to get a fire station down there in this next budget. Mr. Citro?
And before she comes up, $1 million won't buy you an ambulance or a fire engine.
No.
Put it into perspective.
Right.
Chief?
Good evening, Council. Barbara Tripp, Fire Chief for Tampa Fire Rescue. No, $1 million is not going to buy you much. But I can guarantee you that the $1 million will be used towards District 7 to accommodate the discussion that we had with Local 754. And one of the biggest concerns in District 7, it's not only the call volume, but also the response time that's up in the 33647 area. So I can assure you that I've spoke with administration, and we're definitely looking into some ways. I've been working with the real estate department as well to come up with the best possibly efficient event to take place for that $1 million, but it definitely will be used for that.
Councilwoman Hurtak, you're recognized. If Councilman Goods is finished.
No, she answered, but I just want to make, the public know that $1 million.
Yeah, the $1 million is not going to cost. Right now, our rescue cars are costing about $300,000, a little over $300,000, and our fire trucks is a little over $800,000. So yeah, it's.
Councilwoman Hurtak, you're recognized.
So just for fun, a ballpark figure of building a fire station without any land currently acquired would be
Probably about $6-7 million.
Yeah, just to give the public an
Yes.
idea, if we're saying it doesn't cost, like $1 million doesn't do anything, what would do something? So, okay, thank you. So
Yes.
$300,000 for a rescue.
A transport
A
unit.
transport.
Yes, ma'am.
$800,000 for a fire truck.
Yes.
About $6 million for an actual fire station, including purchasing land. About. Okay,
Give or
great.
take.
Thank
And-
you. I just wanted to make sure that the public understood that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and just to go back to Councilmember Vieira, up in that area, the volume is not there, it's the response time. So from my last discussion, I actually broke it down and I talked about the calls. So I went and broke down the calls even more. So out of those 91 calls, we had about 53. That was when I say advanced life support, needing ALS, and half of those was transported. So they was all medical calls out of the 91. So, and I think that's what's needed.
Mr. Chairman?
Councilman Vieira.
And he, since you started, you sure? Okay, there you go.
Direction. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and again, my understanding, like I said, what those funds are going to go to is to lower response times at 33647, and then to fund design for another fire station.
Yes, sir.
Because before you begin, and I'm not, obviously you know this a billion times more than I do, but just for the general public, before you begin construction in a fire station, you need to have designed a year before.
Yes, sir.
So that's a good thing. That is all. Thank you.
And that's-
Councilman Goods.
And that's why I asked that question, because I kept hearing a pumper truck. I didn't really know what that was, because I'm thinking a pumper truck, is that a rescue car and an engine hose on there with a unit there? Is that gonna be a space built for that with that $1 million? And then, of course, finding out 800,000 for a truck in itself. So what is a pumper truck? I keep hearing that word. Is that?
So the pumper apparatus engine that basically holds about 500 gallons of water, you know. But once again, if I go back to the 33647, we need transport. We need ALS transport units up there, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm not gonna say my quick fix, but my, with the $1 million, I can able to put some personnel at one of the stations to help with the transport as well, and look into other ways that we can actually get into that area, under the 8.5 minutes that, our standard of cover states.
Thank you, Chief.
Any other comments? Any other motions? Any other requests?
Well, if I may, I'm just thinking about motion, if it's possible now, either now or at the end of the meeting, I'd like to move the city council increases from personnel reserves to the general fund, operating fund.
Second.
What is that? I mean, I want to,
But the pot of money is laying there, I want to move it from one account to the operating fund.
and what's the, if I, may I?
Sure.
Please, Councilman Viera, you're recognized.
What's the purpose of that? I just want to make sure before.
Well, the way it is now, you can take a raise and nobody's going to know about it. But what I want it
Okay.
done is put it in so everybody knows what we're doing.
I'm with you. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
So in other words, by virtue of voting for this budget, we're not voting for a raise?
exactly right.
Okay, good. With,
You're entitled to a raise. You can take it out anytime after the budget's passed. You can do what you want.
Councilman Viera.
thank you. But again, by passing this, you said we're entitled to, maybe this is a legal question, and this question has been answered, but I just want to clarify that last statement. We still need to move the resolution as a body.
Exactly right.
Okay, good.
Go on.
Correct. Before you could get any adjustment to your salary, there would have to be a resolution making that adjustment.
Councilman Goode.
Mr. Morris, so everybody has an understanding. So Mr. Miranda's trying to move those funds over into the general fund.
Operating.
Operating fund, and then we come back and make a motion for the raise.
Yes, you could make that a motion to bring that money back and put it back into, toward
Do
an
we
adjustment
do
to your
that tonight,
salary.
or do we do it at another meeting?
It would be at another meeting, and there would be a separate resolution that would have to be brought forward for approval by council with the recommendation of the mayor per the charter.
Any other further comments? Thank you. I would like to state this, that, first question, we have two video companies that we've asked for $200,000 each. That is in the budget, correct?
yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. We've heard different things about fire stations, whatever. I can't put a number on it, but we need more staffing.
Yes, sir.
We can have 200 new recruits come in, but if 214 leave, we're still down 14. I want to keep the citizen-staff ratio where it's at, even though we have more and more people moving into the city. And again, fire, police, park and recreation, permitting, inspection, code enforcement, solid waste, stormwater. Again, I can't put a number on it.
Understood.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are we going to the finance chair now, or did you
Well,
want to?
we have a motion, we haven't voted.
Okay. That was a motion made by Councilman Miranda. Who was it seconded by? Councilwoman Hurtak. Roll call vote, please.
Carlson,
Yes.
Goose,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Hurtak,
Yes.
Sierra. Yes. Maniscalco, and Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Mr. O'Hara.
Thank you, sir. Now will the finance chair please provide the second reading of the ordinance adopting the fiscal year 23 City of Tampa budget?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Hara. Item number 14, an ordinance for second reading. An ordinance adopting the budget of the City of Tampa, Florida for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2022 and ending September 30th, 2023, providing for the levy as provided by law of a tax on all taxable properties in the City of Tampa, and fixing the millage within said city, making appropriation in accordance with the provisions of said budget, authorizing and directing the mayor, the city clerk, as the proper authorities of the City of Tampa to certify the property appraisers, Hillsborough County, Florida. The millage will be levied for all purposes for the fiscal year 2023 in the City of Tampa, providing an effective date.
Have a motion made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Viera. Yes. Goos,
Yes.
Carlson,
No.
Hurtak,
Yes.
Maniscalco. Miranda.
Yes.
And Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried with Carlson voting no.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
Okay. I want to make a motion to request a quarterly budget update around the housing buckets, homelessness services,
Second.
public services, rental assistance, homeownership and acquisition/rehab that includes columns for funds allocated for the year, funds expended in the current quarter, funds encumbered in that time, and funds available during the January 26, 2023 workshop. Like to have a discussion around housing at that time.
Motion made by Councilwoman Hurtak, seconded by Councilman Miranda. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Viera. Yes. Goos,
Yes.
Maniscalco. Miranda.
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Hurtak,
Yes.
and Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Okay, and I have a second motion. I'm asking staff to draft a resolution to bring back to City Council on October 3rd that provides for the only alternative option for the ARPA $5.5 million funding that's currently dedicated to solid waste. The only alternative option be those 5 housing buckets presented for fiscal year 2023 budget after seeing the updated actionable housing requirements in combination with the outcome of the efficiency and solid waste rate studies.
October 6th.
I want them to come back with a resolution on October 6th saying that the only other thing this solid waste money can be spent on is housing in one of those 5 buckets.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a motion made by Councilwoman Hurtak, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Maniscalco. Yes. Carlson,
Yes.
Viera. Yes. Goos,
Yes.
Miranda.
Yes.
Hurtak,
Yes,
and Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
thank you.
You are welcome. Mr. O'Hara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand we can move on to the capital improvements budget resolution, so if the city council chair will make a motion to adopt that.
I will entertain a motion to adopt that.
Oh, I apologize, entertain a motion.
We have a motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. Any discussion? Roll call. I'm sorry, Mr. Shelby.
Just for the purposes of the agenda, that's item number 4, is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay,
oh, yes,
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Roll call vote.
Hurtak,
Yes,
Goos,
Yes.
Viera. Yes. Carlson,
No.
Maniscalco. Yes. Miranda. Yes. And Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried with Carlson voting no.
Mr. O'Hara.
Thank you, sir, and will the city council chair entertain a motion to close this hearing? Oh, I'm sorry.
Receive and file first, and then.
Okay,
Second.
thank you, Mr. Madison.
We have a motion to receive and file made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilwoman Hurtak. Roll call vote.
Goos,
Yes.
Viera. Yes. Maniscalco. Yes. Miranda. Yes. Hurtak,
yes,
Carlson,
Yes.
and Citro.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Move to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Thank you very much, council.
You are welcome. Then I need a motion to close the second public hearing. Motion made by Councilman Vieira, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor? We are adjourned.